Hello, good friends, good readers, and booktube. Thank you for joining me this afternoon for a review of the book I have just finished, which is The Loved Ones by Evelyn Waugh. Here presented in this wonderful little Penguin Classic edition, which I picked up just last month. There's the back description if you want to pause and read it. I actually do not agree that that is an accurate representation, but go for your life if you want to. Pause. On the cover art, you've got that beautiful black and white by Quentin Blake, which is incredibly suited to the interior. Ignore that sticker. I'll get to it one day. I just read it first. And the dedication in here is to Nancy Mitford, which means something to those people who are into English literature. But for those who aren't, you may never have heard of Evelyn Waugh, or you may be saying, I know that name, where do I know it from? Well, Arthur Evelyn St. John Waugh, what a name, hey? Was born in 1903 and died in 1966. His family were literary. His father was a man of letters, apparently, and one of his brothers was also a writer of English literature. According to some, Evelyn Waugh is recognised as one of the great prose stylists of the English language in the 20th century. I'm quoting that directly out of Wikipedia. And other sources call him one of the most brilliant satire writers of the 20th century. I personally enjoy satire. I've got limited capacity for it, but this was a small book and I thoroughly enjoyed it. So, The Loved One was published in 1948. It is certainly very witty, very witty, well written, definitely satirical in a big, sarcastic, sardonic, acidic, darkly humorous way, and it is also darkly fascinating. It is about the funeral business in Los Angeles, and I do apologize to my American friends and viewers for the aspirations cast upon them by Evelyn Waugh, and I'll mention them in this review, but Waugh was not a fan of America or Americans, and anything I say that is mildly offensive, I promise it's Waugh's opinions and not mine. I've never been there. Now, Waugh apparently wrote this book after a visit to Hollywood, and the setting is very much the British expatriate community in Hollywood, mostly as exemplified by Sir Ambrose, who's the self-designated leader of the Brits in exile and is an British actor in Hollywood, and whose Sir may even be real. And he leads the cricket club, which don't necessarily play much cricket, we hear, but are definitely the Brits in exile. Now, Waugh's visit to Hollywood was apparently due to an expressed desire by MGM to adapt Brideshead Revisited to movie form. Now, some of you are going, aha, I knew that author's name. Evelyn Waugh wrote Brideshead Revisited. In The Loved One, there is a heavily lampooned movie company called Megalopolitan Studios. It is roundly abused, and I don't think there can be any doubt, it certainly seems likely to me, that Megalopolitan Studios was developed from Waugh's experiences and observations of MGM. Now, Waugh and his wife, I gather, were funded to go from Britain to Hollywood for these discussions, and he got a stipend as well. Waugh was allegedly baffled by the USA popularity of the book Brideshead Revisited and was scathing about the average American's ability to understand the underlying themes of it. However, Waugh was entirely willing for MGM to fund his visit to Hollywood and took full advantage of the studio's willingness to pay for a lot. And it seems like the monetary logistics of getting from Britain to Hollywood and back again, based on his experiences, are echoed in The Expatriates, funding the return of British people from Hollywood to Britain when they feel they are letting down the British side in America, which actually does happen to our main character, Barlow, later in the book. Now, this proposed movie version of Brideshead Revisited never went ahead. Waugh was annoyed by the studio, whose representatives and proposed adapter of the book saw it purely as a love story, which was certainly not the way Waugh saw it, and it was definitely not the way I saw it either when I read it back in my teens or early 20s. Waugh also volubly doubted the American ability to ever understand the theological implications of the book and what he was trying to say. And his insistence of the underlying themes led to MGM losing hope in the whole project and giving up on it. Now, in the 1980s, a British TV series of Brideshead Revisited did actually happen. I'm pretty sure it was 11 episodes, which I watched, and I suspect that many people my age, or a little bit less, who have heard of Waugh but don't read a lot of English literature, probably know his name and Brideshead Revisited from that series, which I gather was really, really good. I don't remember it terribly well. I do remember that it was very popular with my mother, though, and it did well. Now, The Loved One is a sarcastic ornament, as I would put it, from the deep mine of literary gold, as Waugh put it, that he found in the cemetery of Forest Lawn. Now, this part is described in Michael Davies' 1976 book, The Diaries of Evelyn Waugh, in case you're wondering where I get all this notion from. But the deep mine of literary gold is directly from there. Now, while he was visiting in Hollywood, the founder of this institution, Dr. Herbert Eaton, and his staff apparently gave Waugh multiple tours of the facility, introduced him to the embalming process, may have even given him an embalming manual, and the human idiosyncrasies and social doom and gloom that he meant Brideshead Revisited to suggest to the reader had fallen so flat with the American universe that he decided to write The Loved One, which had the same themes but not with any subtlety at all. The Loved One is many shades of interesting. It is sarcastic, it is witty, it is dark, but it is not in any way subtle, and I enjoyed that a great deal. It has huge amount of mockery for human pretensions, especially as they surround death. And I found it often very funny. Now, this book starts when this unofficial head of the British Expatriate Society, Sir Ambrose, visits Sir Francis Hindley's house. Now, Sir Francis Hindley is described as an aging author. He'd had successful books in Britain, and then he came out to Hollywood to be a main scriptwriter for Megalopolis or whatever studios, thinly veiled look at MGM. He's fallen slightly from that role, and now he's just preparing briefs for actresses who need to be re-imaged in whatever popular mode of the time. Now, also living with Sir Francis Hindley is Barlow, who is our 28-year-old main protagonist of this novel. My feeling is that Barlow is modelled more than slightly by the author on himself. Barlow is residing with Sir Francis, having come out to work for the studios as a poet for an adaptation of Shelley's life, which has fallen through, and the studios have fired him, and he is now working somewhere else. Now, Barlow is clearly working somewhere else, and he and Sir Francis say, uh-oh, when they see Sir Ambrose coming. He must have twigged to something. But we don't actually get told what. Sir Ambrose's visit is clearly because he has caught wind of what Barlow is doing that he feels is letting down the British side. And it's full of veiled hints and circular references to other Brits who've been there in America but have gone back to Great Britain or England because they weren't being proper English people. Now, at the end of this, we go to Barlow's job. Apparently, working in America as anything but an actor or a scriptwriter is letting down the side. And this is a fascinating glance into British expatriate societies in that sort of era, which reminds me of other books that I've read, notoriously Gerald Durrell's book about travelling around the world looking for animals and these small enclaves of Britishness that he finds in darkest Africa, scattered around the place as he's looking for animals. So we go to this job of Barlow's, and clearly it's some sort of mortuary cemetery situation, but Waugh is very coy about it. It's only hinted at. It ends up being the happier hunting ground, and while Waugh teases us for some time as to what it actually is, it is eventually revealed in a very witty and entertaining way as a pet cemetery, a premium crematorium which is trying to model itself after the incredibly upmarket Whispering Glades. So the Whispering Glades is clearly the loved one, the book's commentary on the cemetery of Forest Lawn. I do wonder a little bit what Forest Lawn proprietors would have made of this book when it came out, because I would not find it complimentary if it was made about me, shall we say. Okay, so we first encounter Whispering Glades through Barlow as he goes there to organise the funeral of Sir Francis. Sir Francis has hung himself after being fired from Megalopolitan Studios in possibly the most insulting and snide way Waugh could come up with. And Waugh was good at snide. He could do snide in his sleep. The story of Sir Francis's end with the studios is actually more disturbing or more funny. I'm not sure, a bit of both. So Barlow goes there and he's fascinated by Whispering Grove with its insanely differential and weird attitude to death. The whispering rooms, the upmarket furnishing, the gentle murmurs of the consultant that takes all personal notes. The phraseology on which the book title is based in this weird codified way of speaking and relating to death that Whispering Grove has. In Whispering Grove, the loved one is code for the deceased, the dead person, whereas the waiting one is code for the mourner. One suspects, and I had a bit of a discussion with someone else today about this, that they're waiting to see their loved one again, or they're waiting for their loved one to be buried, or maybe they're waiting for themselves to die, because Whispering Glades is strong at pushing a plan for one's own death that one can pay off in advance, saving one's descendants the misery. Barlow is fascinated by all this. He doesn't find it particularly morbid, he just finds it fascinating and strangely engrossing. And then, as well as being completely fascinated by Whispering Grove, its different gardens where people can be buried, the Poet's Garden or the English Garden or the Island Garden, there's all this weird stuff there. Anyway, in the course of giving all the details for St. Francis's funeral, Barlow is interviewed by a mortuary cosmetician who refuses to give him her name, but he becomes completely enamored by her. She apparently fits the description of exactly what he's been looking for in All the Girls of America and not finding. So Waugh was clearly fascinated by all the minutiae of the funeral home, its conventions, its idiocies and all. And I, as the reader, was fascinated by Waugh's descriptions of it all in a way I don't think too many writers could write about a pretentious, snobbish funeral home in such an entertaining way. But Evelyn Waugh sure did it. So, having met this cosmetic mortuary assistant and totally failing to make any impression on her, Barlow is later wandering around various gardens in the way that we'd wander through a park or botanical gardens, but these gardens are extensive and they've got lakes and they've got monuments and small bronze plaques embedded in the grass. So as he's wandering through all this, Barlow comes across the cosmetician of his dreams relaxing after work amongst the bronze plaques embedded in the lush, grassy areas. Can you imagine a more romantic meeting? So Barlow's pursuing Amy with not very much success initially, until she finds out that he's a poet. And he is a poet. He's had a book published back in England, and his pursuit of her is complicated by the fact that Amy is also being pursued by the senior mortician, Mr. Joyboy, who she completely worships. But Barlow realizes that the poetry is going to get him there. Unfortunately, his poetic endeavors have always been about war, and they're not, and grimmer stuff. They're not what you need when wooing a young American lassie. So, having gained the traction by admitting that he's the published poet back in England, he showers Amy with poetry which she believes he's written for her, but has actually been cobbled together from various famous poets through the years. Amy as a character is presented as more than slightly dumb, very uneducated, extremely dense, and almost pathologically weird. Her last name, which I'm not going to try and pronounce, is Greek for born for death, which I suspect many of this book's original readers may not have known. And she is described by Waugh on first Barlow meeting her as having eyes greenish and remote with a rich glint of lunacy. So that is Amy, and Barlow is pursuing her. This is not a love story. In the same way that Brideshead Revisited is not a love story, but that was too subtle for some readers for it apparently to understand, Waugh wanted to make absolutely certain that no one for a second thought that this was a love story, and it's not. It is, in fact, probably Waugh taking revenge on all the people who saw Brideshead Revisited as a love story, and he's given them this. It is apparently, I'm told, designed to be a comic novel, really taking the piss out of America and Hollywood in general, with no great concern about how many Americans may be enraged. In fact, I rather suspect he was hoping to annoy, upset, and aggrieve American readers. And I rather imagine him being annoyed and bewildered once again when the loved one was well received in the US and sold very well. So, for such a small book, there's an awful lot there. There's layers upon layers, and it's not densely written by any means. There's layers upon layers of stuff happening at different times. And Waugh is probably not necessarily trying to fool you, but in his innate writing style, the things that he writes do fool you in strange ways. In any case, I thoroughly enjoyed it. It was exactly what I was in the mood for. Would I always be in the mood for it? No. I don't do well on large amount of satire. I enjoy it every now and then, like, I don't know, salted cashews, but you don't want to have it for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. However, as a stand-alone English satire, when I haven't read very much English literature recently, I did thoroughly enjoy it. It was funny. It was well written. That image relates to the caskets in Whispering Grove and in the Happy Hunting Ground, and a lot of the descriptions of Barlow and the pets being taken to the Happy Hunting Grounds are really quite hysterically funny. In this day and age, especially when nearly every pet is cremated, which I don't imagine was the case in the 40s. Anyhow, the ending, I am not going to tell you. If you really want to, you can go to Wikipedia or a literature site and read it. I don't think, if there's any chance at all of you reading this book, I don't think you want to know it in advance. I didn't know it in advance. It was marvelous. It was dark. It was crazy, ridiculous, unexpected. It was just a batshit crazy ending that somehow was normalized inside Barlow's perspective. I thoroughly recommend this book to anyone who's in any way entertained by satire or English literature. If you haven't heard of Evelyn Waugh before, I don't know that this is a bad book to start with. It's short, and if you don't like this one, I don't know that you'd like much of the rest of his. Why am I saying you won't like it? I loved it. I had a great time. I'll stop now. Thank you for watching. Go away, read good books. Read The Loved One. It is a good book. Bye.